Welcome back, troops, to Let's Tab 59. The realities of war. Why am I talking to you today in this video about the realities of war? What for? Well, for a couple of three reasons actually. First of all, if there's any young people out there that are considering joining the military, this isn't going to prepare you. What I'm going to tell you is not going to prepare you for the realities of war, but it's just going to give you something to think about before you sign up. I'm not saying don't sign up. I just want you to be aware, and I'll try and give you some insight. If you're a civilian with no chance of joining the military, no real interest in joining the military, but it may be of interest to you to hear some of what I'm going to talk about. If you're a serving soldier, or indeed a veteran, then some of what I'm going to say you may be able to relate to, and it might be of interest to you. Now I have to point out to everybody that everybody that goes into a conflict is going to experience it a different way and remember it a different way. We're all different, and we're all going to experience different types of conflict, different intensities, different actions. So I want to talk about those. And just remember, everyone's different. I don't want to get into a bun fight about whose war was tougher than whose war. It's how you interpret it. Now, the realities of war, as I said, are really, really difficult to explain if you've not experienced it yourself. Now, many of you would have seen war movies that are quite gritty. Say, Saving Private Ryan, for instance, or Black Hawk Down. Two very gritty movies where the graphics involved and the casualty simulation of the actors taking part in the movies was very, very gritty and graphic. Not like the old black and white day movies where you know, some guy gets shot in the arm or the chest, there's a little red spot on his uniform and he falls over or whatever. Come a long way since then with graphics, haven't they? But that's different. Even films like Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down, they're still different to the reality of war. You'll also maybe have sat online on your phone or on the laptop or whatever and looked at footage, real footage of combat coming out of places like Ukraine, where soldiers have got GoPros on, or you've seen drone footage of drones dropping grenades on soldiers on the ground and them getting killed or injured. Trench clearing, there was one on some time ago of Ukrainian special forces with GoPros on clearing a Russian trench. Very close quarter fighting, and you could see people being shot and killed, and that's shocking and that's quite graphic, and you can find it on the internet. But that's still not going to prepare you. Nothing is going to prepare you. That's what the zest of this video. Nothing is going to prepare you for the realities of it, and you're going to experience it in your own way for many, many factors, as I said. So you're detached when you're watching these war movies. You know it's not real. When you're watching the internet of combat footage, say from Ukraine, you know it's real, but you're detached. You're not part of it, you're detached from it. Now, I might have to, in this video, refer to a piece of paper I've got in my pocket so I cover all the bullet points. I don't normally have a script, and you can see I'm not scripting it now. But in this instance, I may have to pull out a bit of paper and just check my next bullet point to get it in the right order. That's basically what I'm going to do. So apologies for that. So, my experience, let's go on to that. Now, I served in Northern Ireland, in Bosnia, and more recently, although it's 20 years ago now, Iraq. So I can only speak for my experiences of conflict. But of all those operations that I went on, and I did do a few, there's one particular moment, a short period of time on one of those operations that really, really stands out in my mind. I can shut my eyes, I don't even have to shut my eyes, I can remember it. I can remember it clear as a bell. And the funny thing is, or the strange thing is about this incident, I'll tell you about it in a moment, The strange thing is about this incident that happened to me, it's in Northern Ireland, was nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened in the incident. So it was my very first time on a foot patrol in Northern Ireland, for the very first time. And the patrol was probably 3 or 4 hours. I can't remember. I don't remember anything about the patrol apart from the very first opening part of the patrol. I remember that distinctly. I remember it was February. It was West Belfast. There was a light dusting of snow still on the ground. It was cold. It was mid-morning. We got our briefing from the intelligence section in the patrol briefing room. We then got a briefing from our brick commander, and we moved down to the loading bay. Obviously we've got flak jackets on, etc. We've got our SLR rifles in those days. We went to the loading bay, loaded a magazine. I can't remember, I think it's 10 rounds maybe. I think we had to have 2 magazines of 10 rather than 1 round magazine of 20. Stuck a 10 round magazine on the rifle, done all the drills at the loading bay, and then we lined up in our patrol formation, our brick formation, behind the big steel gates of the security force base. Overlooking the gates was a sanger, a tower, and up there was a guy, I think he might have had a machine gun, certainly had a rifle, and he was observing out over the road. He knew he was about to go on patrol, and that's the most vulnerable time when we was on patrol, was leaving the SF base. When those gates open, you've got to get out there and you've got a hard target for the first, say, 20, 25 metres or maybe a bit longer to get to your first piece of cover, and then you pepper pot through, the rest of the patrol pepper pots through you, the first 2 out the gate. So it's a very, very tense time on the foot patrol. And I remember it distinctly. I remember kneeling down. I can remember feeling sort of the wet snow melting through the kneecap of my trousers, if you like. I could feel that. I can feel the cold, but I was sweating, I was hot. I can remember feeling really hot. I hadn't exerted myself. It was just the fear, or being scared. I don't know what it was. I suppose it was fear. Fear of the unknown or whatever, I don't know. And then the gates being opened, getting the nod from the patrol commander, brick commander, and out through the gates we went. Hard targeting across the road. Taking up a fire position. The rest of the lads getting out, then everybody getting up on the nod and patrolling on through the streets. And I can't remember the rest of the patrol. Now, that's just one experience. Now, it's not a reality of war, necessarily. Nothing happened, as I say, but it was a reality of experiencing fear, maybe, on the first operation, the first foot patrol of the first operation that I went on as a young soldier. And that stayed with me ever since. No, I'm not post-traumatic about it. It's not a trauma. I don't dream about it. But it's just a strange memory that I've got. So that was my first experience, if you like, of sort of feeling something. Now, I've got to refer to a bit of paper, excuse me. So, the other reality that I want to talk about is the difference between seeing dead and injured soldiers, whether that's your own unit, your own soldiers, or the enemy force. The difference between seeing those soldiers dead or injured to seeing civilians dead and injured. Civilians dead and injured, especially children, very prevalent. Any Bosnia veterans, you'd have seen that. When you first see dead bodies, it's shocking, it's horrible, because it's not the norm, is it? And you see them for real life laying there. You can see sometimes the injuries that they've received. You can see sometimes what's actually killed them, the injury that's killed them in some circumstances. And it's horrific. But when you see civilians, whether it's old people, women, but especially children, that will have a lasting effect on you. I'm pretty sure it will. Tell me if I'm wrong, you veterans. But I know it had a lasting effect on me. Again, that's something I can visualise. Seeing not so much the dead soldiers, but civilians, especially children. That's quite a sobering thing to see. So that's a reality. let me tell you, something you might not have considered. So looking again at a bit of paper, bear with me. So these realities of war are going to affect what you see, as I just mentioned, sights, sounds and smells. We spoke about sights, what you're going to see. You're going to see death and destruction, obviously. Buildings devastated, it's awful. You see on TV, you look at Gaza, you see the destruction out there. But sounds, now, the sound of battle, the sound of war, being in a contact, it's really noisy. It's much different to being on exercise. The blank ammunition is a less of a charge in your rifle, and it just doesn't seem to be as intense on exercise. Even on the ranges, live firing, it's quite intense, and I suppose that's about the closest you can get to it. But the noise of battle, mortars going out, coming in, explosions, artillery, grenades going off, people shouting and screaming orders about. It's very confusing, very loud. So sounds is a reality, let me tell you. And here's one, not everyone's experienced this, smells. Now, I never even thought of this one at all. I never thought about smells. And what happened was, I was back from Iraq. I'd been back about 2, maybe 3 years. And I got posted to Aldershot. And while I was there, I had a problem with my car's air conditioning unit. And so on the day off, I drove from Aldershot down the M3 towards Basingstoke, somewhere like that, to get the aircon recharged at a garage. Went down there, got it recharged. Happy days. The guy said to me, listen, when you take your car back now, run, it was summer anyway, run the aircon, give it a good blast, make sure it's all good. Although he tested it. So I did, so I jumped in the truck, driving back up the M3 towards Aldershot, and aircon blasting. And after just a couple of minutes, a smell come out of the aircon, and I can't tell you what the smell is. I can't even describe what it smelt like. It was just a strange, maybe it's because it'd been recharged or so, I don't know, but there was this smell that come out of the aircon, and it took me straight back to Iraq. It was the same smell I remembered smelling in the ops room in Iraq from the air conditioning in there. Now, that was nothing horrific. It's just a smell of aircon, and it was the same smell that I'd experienced. I'd smelt it in the ops room in Iraq. But when I smelt it in the car, it just hit me, and I had to pull over at the side of the road. I had to pull onto the hard shoulder and just switch it, just get out for a moment and just have a moment to myself. It's never happened before, it never happened since. So what I was trying to say is, sights, sounds and smells are all going to be could be realities of war for you. Some of you may relate to some of those. Quick refer to my paper, because I've got to get this in the right order. So please bear with me a second. Okay, fear. This is a big one. Anyone that tells you you're not scared, you don't experience fear, is either a psychopath or a liar. You've probably heard that before. I believe it's true. Everybody will experience fear, and you're going to be scared. What can get you prepared for that experience? Nothing. Apart from your training. If you get the basics right, if you get your basic skill as a soldier, your basic skills and drills drummed into you, all the real actions on, what if, basic things like camouflage, concealment, movement with a weapon, fire positions, patrolling skills, anti-ambush drills, reaction to effective enemy fire, all those little basic soldier stuff that's right at basic level, they are what's important, and they will help you overcome fear, and I'll tell you why. If those drills become second nature, when you come into a contact, when you come under fire, you'll have that moment of fear, you'll have that moment of tensing up and freezing up. People start shouting, screaming maybe, weapon systems going off, and you're going to have that moment where you could be, not just saying you are, you could be slightly paralysed with fear. If your drills and skills are drummed in, and if they're good and slick, that will pass. And those skills and drills, that training that you've had, will kick in and will make you react and get into the fight. I can promise you that. Absolutely promise you that. Imagine, if you want, you drive a car. You go out to get in your car. You're going off to work, you're going to the pub, well, not the pub, whatever you're doing, you're going out to your car. All the actions that you do, from walking out your house and getting into your car, unlocking it, getting in, putting the seatbelt on, adjusting your mirror, starting the engine, putting the car in gear, checking your mirrors, indicating and driving off and changing gear. You do that, you do all of that without even thinking about it. You don't even half remember doing it. It just happens because you've done it so many times. It's drilled into you over and over because you've done it so many times. If you get your basic military skills and drills, your actions on, you get all those basics slick and drummed into you through good, solid training, I guarantee that will help you overcome fear in combat. I can promise you that one. That will help you. Now, afterwards, after war, after conflict. Now, years ago there was nothing. Certainly Northern Ireland days, Operation Banner, you came back off of a tour and that was it. You got back to camp, whether you had to catch a plane back to Germany or UK or you got the ferry or whatever, you got back to your base location, square all the kit away, hand in any kit's got to be handed in, sort your weapon systems out, get them cleaned, account for all that, put all that away, and when it was done you get a pat on the back lecture or presentation from your boss, the CO, and the Sergeant Major gives you the reality and you're knocked off. You go off and leave the next day or the same day, or you go down the bar and get drunk with your mates, you go home to your married quarter with your wife and family, whatever. That's what you had. And that was pretty much all you had through all these conflicts, up until Iraq and Afghanistan, when they decided that there was a problem with people's mental health and PTSD was creeping in and becoming more aware of it. And so then, a couple of things happened. After you'd been on a patrol and there'd been a contact, you was in a conflict, a gun battle, whatever, an IED incident, whatever it was. After that, you came back into camp and you would have a hot debrief. You'd all sit round in a briefing room and you'd all talk and discuss what just happened on the ground. And that's a good thing, because when you're trying to turn out of the wind, I hope it's not affecting the mic, when you're in that contact, it's hard afterwards to remember everything that's happened. And not knowing the full picture, because you can only remember your part of that contact, whatever you did or didn't do, that's probably all you're really aware of. It's all a bit confused and just happened. But when you sit down in the patrol room with a mug of tea and maybe a cigarette, and everyone's talking about, and your mate says, oh yeah, this happened, then so-and-so done this, you slowly pick bits off the other patrol members, and you get in the bigger picture of what just happened. And then it all guns together and makes more sense. So the hot debrief was really important. And of course the other thing they did with Iraq and Afghanistan was, at the end of the tour, instead of troops going straight home, straight back to camp base location in UK, Germany, wherever it was, they went on decompression. Now, decompression, I never did it because I was wounded when I was in Iraq, so I was sent back through the medical evacuation system and then put on leave and Y list, etc. So I didn't go through the decompression phase of ending a tour. But basically what happened was, I think it was Cyprus was used quite a lot. Troops would be moved from the theatre of operations, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan, and they would go to, say, Cyprus, to a decompression camp where they could have a beer, play a bit of sports, do a bit of chill out time. They could speak to the padre, or they could speak to somebody, a psychiatric guy or whatever, just talk amongst themselves and just decompress for a number of days. And I don't know how long the decompression phase was because I didn't go through it. But basically that's what that used to happen. And that sort of just had that change of mindset from being in the conflict in theatre and going straight home. You had that bit in the middle, that decompression bit. And I think it was helpful. If you've ever experienced it, put something in the comments about it, because I don't know, I didn't go through decompression. So that's what happened. Now, One more word I will say on anyone thinking of joining the army. Obviously, the amount of exposure to conflict, combat, fighting, contact, whatever you want to call it, could, to a degree, I'm going to walk up this way because it's a bit more sheltered. The degree's going to vary with what cap badge or what branch you're in. But however, that doesn't make you immune from it, from experiencing it. So just because you're not joining the infantry doesn't mean to say you're not going to be experiencing stuff. You could be a base rat, what we call a base rat. You could be a clerk, a paid clerk, I don't know, clerical staff. You could be a chef, you could be a medic in the regimental aid post. I don't know, all sorts of jobs where you don't really leave camp very often. Let me tell you, the camps in Iraq and Afghanistan came under regular fire. They come under mortar and rocket attack on a regular basis. Not so much maybe down in places in Iraq like Shaiba, the log base, and same in Afghanistan with Camp Bastion. I never went to Afghanistan, but Camp Bastion, fairly safe, nowhere safe, but fairly safe. Remember, in Iraq and Afghanistan, there was no front line. So you were never miles behind the front line. As I say, Camp Bastion was quite detached from the fighting areas, if you like, and Shaiba in Iraq was quite detached. But there was still a threat there, and I'm sure they had incidences on those bases. I was never there. So your cap badge is not necessarily going to give you a lot of protection from what you might see in a conflict. Obviously, if you join the infantry, you join the Royal Marines, you join artillery, engineers, those troops that are forward out on the ground. There's lots of other units that go out on the ground, Royal Armoured Corps, Tank Regiment. You've got more chance of being exposed to actual combat with the enemy. You've got more chance to be exposed to that, if that's what cap badge you go into. But for instance, Northern Ireland. Now, in Northern Ireland, we had, and lads will tell you, I done a tour in Northern Ireland as a Royal Artillery soldier. Royal Artillery, Royal Engineers, Royal Armoured Corps, they were all used in the infantry role because we just didn't have enough infantry battalions to do some of the tours. So non-infantry cap badge guys, soldiers, because that's what you are first, whatever your trade is, you're a soldier first, were used in the infantry role. And I'm sure that happened in other conflicts. So depending on your cap badge can depend to a degree what amount of exposure you're going to see in combat, but not necessarily. And even in camp, as I say, camps come under attack. One final thought before I go. The conflict in Ukraine and Russia, there's hundreds of thousands of people on both sides being killed and injured, some seriously maimed, life-changing injuries. They must already have so many people in both those countries that are suffering with issues from the realities of war, PTSD. They must already be swamped. When the conflict finally ends and both countries settle into peacetime again, I think both countries are going to be absolutely, their medical systems in those countries, whatever health system they've got in those countries, they are going to be absolutely swamped with cases of mental welfare, PTSD, etc. If you're thinking of joining up, to say you'll get presentations through your basic training about the realities of war, but nothing can prepare you for it. Certainly not watching Saving Private Ryan or the internet. Just bear that in mind. So that's it for today. Slightly different subject to normal, I know. If you're new to my channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider it. I'm not saying do it, I'm saying please, please, please consider subscribing. Stay safe, troops. Until the next time, remember, West Tab.